Emotional experience of a BPD child. Understanding how your daughter really feels involves recognizing that individuals with BPD experience emotions differently from others. To grasp the emotional world of a child with BPD, it's helpful to consider their development. Unlike many other species, human infants are born very dependent. They can't feed or walk on their own and have only partially developed brains. It takes about 20 years for their brains to fully mature. In the beginning, babies mainly feel either good or bad. Their primary way of dealing with these feelings is by crying until someone helps them feel better. Parents respond to their baby's cries by checking various things to ease their distress. They look into whether the diaper is clean, offer food, check if the baby is too hot or cold, and examine if the clothing is too tight. The baby doesn't understand the parent's needs or feelings and will cry more if their discomfort isn't relieved. This developmental perspective helps us see that the emotional experiences of a child with BPD are rooted in these early stages, where their understanding of emotions and how to cope with them is quite basic. Usually, as kids grow up and learn to wait for their needs to be met, they become better at handling frustration. They can delay getting what they want for longer, which helps in building stable relationships. However, individuals with BPD struggle with the idea that they can't always get what they want immediately. This can cause them a lot of emotional discomfort when faced with frustration. Even as they grow, their reactions might mature a bit, but they often continue to struggle against it. The crying that might have happened when they were younger can turn into lashing out at their parents. A child with BPD often takes on the victim role because they haven't learned how to deal with their emotions. They still expect others to make their bad feelings go away and hold others responsible if they can't. Similar to when they were babies, they find all discomfort intolerable. This emotional underdevelopment, a key aspect of BPD, shows itself in different ways. Here are some of the earliest signs of this emotional immaturity. Separation anxiety. One of the earliest signs in children at risk for developing BPD is an exaggerated form of separation anxiety. Normally, children might feel a bit uneasy when separating from their primary attachment figure, usually their mothers. This anxiety is natural, as the child relies on the parent for security. However, some children can quickly calm down after being briefly separated. Parents can help by starting with short absences and gradually increasing the time away. Children at risk for BPD, however, struggle to calm themselves or let others comfort them when separated from their parent. They continue to protest and resist efforts to calm them down. These children may get so upset that they vomit or experience headaches or stomach aches due to stress. This often leads the parent to stop whatever they were doing and come to the child's aid. The resistance to separation and the associated anger become the early signs of the later exaggerated fears of abandonment seen in BPD. Frustration tolerance. The term frustration tolerance means how well someone can handle challenges in their life. Having a high frustration tolerance is a good thing. It's crucial for healthy coping. It allows people to think before acting, persist after failure, and control impulsive behaviors. Unfortunately, children with BPD have a very low frustration tolerance. Many parents, especially those with BPD children, often give in to their children to avoid conflict and keep peace. However, giving in, or what I call feeding the monster, the illness, lowers your daughter's frustration tolerance. This is especially true when you give in to her mistreatment of others, because it sends the message that you can't handle her frustration. If she believes her parent can't handle it, she'll think she can't either. This adds to her fear of incompetence, supports her dependence on you, and undermines her self-confidence. Weak empathy. Many family members often feel at some point that the child with BPD doesn't care about their feelings or the feelings of others. The child may convey this directly or indirectly. Direct expressions could be statements like, "I don't give a how you feel about it." An indirect suggestion that the child doesn't care about others' feelings might be making unreasonable demands. For example, a child's inability to acknowledge and accommodate her brother's feelings is evident even on his wedding day. Child, I am so excited about your wedding. Brother, me too. Child, do you think you could pick me up before? Brother, pick you up before the wedding? Child, yes. That way I wouldn't have to worry about getting tired. Brother, and how will you get home? Child, I will need you to drive me back afterward. Brother, on my wedding night? Child, well, you do want me to be there, don't you? The brother will probably assume that his sister doesn't care about his needs or feelings on his wedding night. The reality is that the sister hasn't really thought of, considered, or acknowledged his feelings at all. To her, it's as if he doesn't have any feelings. Children with BPD engage in a constant internal struggle between self-love and self-hate, relying on other people to make themselves feel worthy, often seeking reassurance from them. In practice, this manifests as almost total self-absorption and an apparent lack of empathy for others. Children with BPD may ask people how they feel, but often they are more interested in asking than actually finding out. The follow-up responses often betray this disconnect. In one example, a child with BPD welcomes her parents home, seemingly interested in how they feel. Child, welcome home. How are you guys doing? Mother, I am exhausted. We were delayed at the airport for 3 hours. Father, and then there's the jet lag. We were in the air for 13 hours straight. 4 different time zones. I am exhausted. Child, that's nice. So can one of you give me a ride to the mall and then pick me up at 10 when they close? In this exchange, the child knows that the parents just returned from a long trip, and she asks how they are, which they answer candidly. She then appears to totally disregard what they said and makes an unreasonable request given how they said they feel. She just did not consider their feelings at all. There are times when it appears as though the child is using empathy to find the most painful areas to attack, known as rubbing it in. For example, a child with BPD who knows that her brother was just turned down for a job might say something like, "No wonder you didn't get hired." This is generally not true empathy, where someone seeks to feel another person's feelings, but rather self-reference, where someone assumes that other people get hurt by the same things that she gets hurt by. The sister is not empathizing with her brother regarding how he must feel about being turned down for a job. She just assumes that he will feel the way that she would feel if turned down for a job. Your child's struggle with empathy makes it challenging for her to comprehend the emotions of others. People naturally seek to be understood by those they care about, investing effort in conveying their feelings. However, attempts to evoke empathy from your daughter are likely to be futile. Individuals with BPD resist recognizing others' feelings, and efforts to make them do so often escalate conflicts. When you express your feelings, your daughter may respond with repelling remarks like, "Your feelings? What about my feelings? You don't care about my feelings," or mocking comments such as, "Oh, your little feelings are hurt. Why don't you grow a pair of balls?" The child with BPD avoids acknowledging others' feelings because she craves being the center of attention, and recognizing others' emotions might feel like a slight to her. This avoidance limits her capacity to develop empathy, making it challenging for her to empathize with others in adulthood without proper intervention, even if she desires to do so. Depression, the emotional roller coaster experienced by individuals with BPD, can be incredibly intense. Their frantic attempts to seek reassurance from others may offer short-term relief from the fear of being unloved, but their constant demands often lead to inevitable disappointment. In these frequent moments of letdown, individuals with BPD can abruptly descend into a dark mental state, grappling with intense self-loathing. This is when the risk of self-harm and suicide is most pronounced. The oscillation between these extreme emotional states reflects the fragmented nature of their personality and self-perception. The constant shifting of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs about their identity leads to an inner void, triggering episodes of depression over time. Due to BPD's impact on mood stability, receiving affirmation from others can make them feel lovable, while the absence of what they desire can evoke profound self-loathing. This type of depression, characterized by emptiness, prompts desperate feelings in the child. When people with BPD feel really, really bad, they might do things to feel better. There are two main ways they do this. One is when they try hard to get comfort from others, and the other is when they do things that can hurt themselves. Trying to get comfort from others can be either not too bad or really bad. Not too bad ways include calling someone close, like a parent, to talk and make sure everything's okay. But if the person doesn't answer, it can make them feel even worse. They might leave a lot of messages asking for a callback. Even if they get a callback and feel a bit better, it doesn't last long. They might ask the person to call them again in an hour just to make sure they're okay. This is like an agreement where the person has to be available whenever they feel bad. Another not too bad way is asking for special access to others in case they need urgent help. This could mean getting phone numbers of the person and their friends. But sometimes they might use these numbers for things that aren't urgent, which can be a problem. So, it's important to share these numbers carefully and maybe say, only for emergencies. These ways of seeking comfort are not always bad, but they can be a bit much and not very helpful in the long run. Sometimes, when people with BPD feel really, really bad, they might do harmful things to get attention. This can be extremely serious, especially when they threaten to hurt themselves or even talk about suicide. For instance, if parents plan a trip or a night out, the child might threaten self-harm or suicide, especially if they fear being left alone. People with BPD can act on these threats quickly, and what starts as a threat can turn into actual harm, especially if they feel abandoned. In some cases, the person might not give any warning and might harm themselves without any signs. They might do it privately, leaving behind things like blood or notes that show their pain. If your child shows any signs of self-harm or attempts, it's crucial to seek immediate help, like going to the hospital or an urgent care facility. Inability to take responsibility for behavior. People with BPD find it really hard to admit when they've done something wrong. It's like they're in a constant battle with feeling worthless and not liking themselves. So, when they make a mistake or hurt someone, they struggle to take responsibility. They fear that admitting their mistakes will make them feel even worse about themselves. Because of this fear, they often think of themselves as victims. They believe that others around them are intentionally hurting them or unable to meet their needs. When they get hurt or disappointed, they might respond in hurtful ways, pushing away the people who care about them. This, in turn, makes them feel abandoned and reinforces their belief that they're always the victim in their relationships. The struggle for self-definition. Individuals with BPD are often in emotional pain most of the time. Their struggles go beyond just unstable behaviors and emotions. They grapple with an unstable sense of self. They try to form their identity from two opposing views, sometimes feeling loved and lovable, while other times feeling worthless and unlovable. Their coping strategy involves clinging to the positive image and ignoring the negative, relying on others to support this perspective. However, perceived slights or rejections can abruptly shift their self-perception from wellness and superiority to worthlessness and self-loathing. When others don't consistently reassure them of their superiority by meeting every demand, they blame others for this turmoil. This creates a black and white or all or nothing demeanor, making them seem extreme. It's important to understand that your daughter is in almost constant pain, teetering on the edge of depression, and depends on others for support. Intense feelings of self-loathing may drive individuals with BPD to engage in self-injurious and self-destructive behaviors like cutting, drug overdosing, and even suicide. This is why BPD is often seen as a boundary disorder. People with BPD often blur the line between themselves and others, holding others responsible for how they see and feel about themselves. This blurring affects every aspect of their functioning. Boundary violations, particularly those concerning physical boundaries, are often apparent in individuals with BPD. These violations can involve other people's belongings or the individuals themselves. For instance, it's not uncommon for someone with BPD to borrow clothes from family members and not return them, or return them in a dirty or damaged condition. They might go into the wallets of family members and take money without recognizing this behavior as intrusive or offensive. Many may feel victimized when confronted about such actions. Physical boundary violations become more serious when they directly threaten or infringe upon another person. An example is volunteering someone else's services to gain favor, like offering a friend the help of her father with taxes without asking him first. Another, more severe violation is touching others when or where they do not want to be touched. These actions showcase the challenges individuals with BPD face in understanding and respecting physical boundaries. Violations of emotional boundaries, though more subtle, can be profoundly destructive in individuals with BPD. The person may attempt to make others feel bad about themselves to alleviate their own insecurities. They demand to be put on a pedestal, treated as though they are special, and insist that their needs come before all else, before siblings, family, and even the parents' personal needs. When they perceive others not prioritizing them, especially their parents, they lash out with hurtful statements like, "You are the worst parent ever," "You never loved me," "You only care about sibling," and "I wish I were dead." Through these statements, the individual challenges their parents' self-perception as good, responsible, and devoted parents. This often leads to parents feeling guilty and questioning their abilities, pushing the family toward a breaking point due to the emotional strain caused by the child with BPD. Testing others. Individuals with BPD often seek reassurance of their self-worth by unconsciously testing others in various ways. One common example is the personalized clock they use to determine the quality of their relationships. When they expect someone to contact them or vice versa, they set a mental clock. If the response doesn't meet their expectations, they feel slighted and abandoned, triggering feelings of worthlessness and self-loathing. They then blame the person they were testing for making them feel this way. Another form of constant testing involves a biased search for hidden meaning in communication. People with BPD tend to listen not to what is said, but for possible slights, disloyalty, or signs of abandonment. Their search engine is biased, focusing on keywords that align with their fears and insecurities, rather than neutrally receiving information. This continuous testing can strain relationships and contribute to the emotional challenges experienced by individuals with BPD. In this scenario, the child interprets her father's statement about her friend as a personal slight. Although the father simply mentioned seeing the child's friend Sarah and complimented her appearance, the child projects her insecurities onto the comment. She hears a hidden meaning, believing that her father implied, "She looked great, and you don't." While the father didn't make such a statement, the child creates this hidden meaning by projecting her self-loathing onto her father and becomes upset with him for it. This tendency to project self-loathing onto others fuels the constant need for reassurance that the child is lovable and loved, yet no amount of reassurance ever seems sufficient. "Father, I saw your friend Sarah at the library today. She looked great." Child: "And I look like a piece of dirt?" Father: "I didn't say that." Child: "You never say I look great." Father: "Yes, I have said it." Child: "But you didn't mean it." In this talk, the kid thinks her dad's words about her friend mean something bad about her. Even though he just said Sarah looked nice, she feels like he implied, "She looked great, and you don't." Even though her dad didn't say this, she creates that meaning by putting her own insecurities onto him and gets mad at him for it. This habit of projecting self-hate onto others is why she always needs reassurance that she's lovable, but no matter how much she gets, it never feels like enough. The search engine can seek out behavior as well as words. It can read slights or abandonment into behaviors or the absence of behavior. The following is an example where the child feels slighted by the mother looking at her watch. Child: "Why are you looking at your watch?" Mother: "I wanted to see what time it is." Child: "You're bored. You can't wait to get away from me." Mother: "Sweetheart, that's just not true." Child: "I was just starting to relax and enjoy being with you." Mother: "And I was enjoying being with you." Child: "People do not look at their watches when they are enjoying themselves." In this example, the kid thinks her mom checking the time means she's bored and wants to leave. Even though her mom denies it, she keeps resisting the reassurances, wanting her mom to say them again. This shows how the child projects her fear of being left onto her mom's actions and resists comfort, so her mom will keep reassuring her. Self-fulfilling prophecy. The constant testing behaviors in relationships with individuals with BPD create immense pressure and instability, making it exhausting for others. Trying to decipher the tests to avoid mistreatment becomes a challenge. Over time, people anticipate a caustic environment, and the individual with BPD senses the change, reinforcing their fear of others pulling away. Unfortunately, they may not realize their BPD-driven behavior contributes to this dynamic. The one-sided contract. Individuals with BPD often believe that if someone does something for them once, they're entitled to it forever. For instance, a mother asks her older daughter to pick up the child with BPD from school, who then treats them to ice cream. The next day, the child with BPD expects the same, and if refused, may accuse her sister of not caring or having more important priorities. The past act of kindness might be used against the sister, creating tension and conflict in the relationship. The older sister rapidly realizes that doing something nice for her sister creates an expectation of entitlement whenever the younger sister desires something which feels constant. This realization causes the older sister to limit her affectionate actions toward her sister. As a result, she moves closer to a breaking point where she might no longer want to be involved with her sister and her sister's friends. This contributes to a growing divide within the family. Borderline belief system. The behavior patterns mentioned earlier, when consistently supported, transform into firmly held beliefs about relationships and how they can be influenced. For instance, if a parent yields to a child's tantrums, the child may adopt the belief that acting in an antagonistic manner is an effective way to get others to comply with their desires. This belief is tested repeatedly, especially when the child doesn't get what they want promptly. If this notion is consistently reinforced by giving in, the belief becomes solidified and is no longer questioned. It becomes an automatic or habitual response, necessitating essential techniques. Over time, your child may develop a comprehensive set of solidified beliefs, each associated with different types of dysfunction. Here are some maladaptive solidified beliefs often linked with BPD. 1. If others do not do what you ask of them, you can mistreat them, and they will give in. Consequence. This belief can lead to the end of almost any relationship. 2. Mistreatment is not really damaging to a relationship. Consequence. Supports the child's role as a victim by minimizing her contribution to conflicts in relationships. 3. The rules that apply to others do not apply to me. Consequence. Acting on this belief can lead to frequent violations of laws and rules, potentially signaling sociopathy. Authorities may eventually hold the individual accountable. 4. Other people will give to me only if I force them to. Consequence. Prevents the child from developing naturally reciprocal relationships, as it involves constantly competing with others and compelling them to do things. 5. It is not harmful in a loving relationship to force others to do what they do not want to do. Consequence. Causes the individual with BPD to disregard the feelings and needs of others, leading others to resent her and withdraw from the relationship. 6. I cannot tolerate frustration, and therefore I must get what I want when I want it. Otherwise, it is a crisis. Consequence. Prevents the individual from developing a higher frustration tolerance. 7. I do not need to reciprocate what others do for me. Consequence. Discourages others from being giving or extending themselves because it leaves them feeling used and exploited. 8. It does not matter what other people feel. Consequence. Leaves the child with BPD unprepared and unable to understand and react to others, impairing her social functioning. 9. Other people's feelings are not as important as mine. Consequence. Contributes to those around her feeling exploited and ultimately repelled. 10. Promises don't need to be kept. Consequence. Discounts the powerful effect betrayal has on people, adding to social dysfunction. 11. It weakens you if you admit to a mistake. Consequence. Prevents the child from taking responsibility for her mistakes, leaving others feeling blamed and resentful, contributing to relationship instability. 12. You should never say you are sorry. Consequence. Interferes with social functioning by discouraging trust and increasing resentment. 13. I am a victim. Consequence. Interferes with social functioning by discouraging trust and increasing resentment. 14. I am entitled to expect others to forgive me for anything I must do to get what I want. Consequence. Undermines the development of healthy boundaries, suggesting there are no bounds to her behavior. These beliefs develop over time, if not challenged, leading to repetitive patterns of behavior associated with extensive dysfunction in most relationships, particularly affecting those closest to the child. This video highlighted how BPD significantly influences your daughter's life and well-being. People with BPD often face emotional pain and display specific behavior patterns due to factors like fears of being unloved or abandoned, limited frustration tolerance, and a weak ability to empathize with others. Taking responsibility for their actions becomes challenging, leading to frequent testing behaviors. Additionally, individuals with BPD may develop belief systems that can hinder relationships if not addressed. In the upcoming lecture, we will delve into the impact of your daughter's BPD on family members. To stay updated, kindly subscribe to our notifications. Thanks for your time.